Hey everyone, welcome to a Mondays with Melissa, where I am going to answer a question that was sent to me actually about 2 weeks ago now. And obviously, I answered the question for the person that reached out to me, but I thought this was a good question for me to address in the podcast. So it was about chores and how much is too much, and should they get allowance? Should they not get allowance? Is it something that they should just be required to do? And anyway, so many questions. So I'm going to touch on three things today, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. If not, then it is what it is. We can't please everyone, right? Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. So the first thing I'm going to touch on is how much is too much. So I think what we have to think about if we are looking at the chores that we're expecting our kids to do, what are we doing? If our kids are actually doing more cleaning and chores, whether it's indoors or outdoors, right? If they're doing more than we're doing, or even I would say, even if they're doing the equal amount, like that feels a little bit off because kids are supposed to learn through play. So our kids need to be able to have the freedom to play and learn in that way, right? Their job is not to keep our house clean. Their job is not to learn how to be responsible, 4-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 12-year-olds that know how to keep a house clean. Like, obviously, we want to instill in them the ability to care for the things that they have, care for our home. This is our home. Everybody contributes, right? But if our kids are doing more than we are, or even if we're doing the same amount, that I would say is when you know it's too much. So just kind of pay attention. If you're noticing that, like, okay, I have my kids doing their own laundry, cleaning their own room, picking up the dog poop, feeding the dog, feeding the cat, cleaning the litter box, vacuuming, doing the dishes, and all I'm doing is cleaning the bathroom and taking care of my own room, my own laundry. I would say that's too much. So there needs to be a balance there of allowing them to learn that responsibility, but also at the same time, let their bodies and brains grow in the way that they're supposed to, which is through play and interaction and connection and attachment. Okay. So those are kind of my thoughts on that. So let's let our kids be kids. If we are modeling for our kids cleanliness and a willing to help them. So, you know, if they complain about how many chores they have, and my response is always like, you're fine, just go do your chores, as opposed to, what can I help you with? What do you need from me? That can make a difference, right? So if we're willing to step into that space and help them, um, whatever they are asking for, right? Like, I'm not going to do it for them. I mean, sometimes I might if my kiddo is sick or they've had a really long week or they had something really hard happen. Yeah, I might step in and do their chores for them because that shows compassion and that shows like I'm going to give you grace because I know that it's been a hard week, right? But also, like, we cannot expect our kids to do chores the way we do them. In fact, let me take that back. We can't expect anyone else to do our chores the way we do them. So, unless you are going to give them a list of, like, here are the 10 steps to cleaning the kitchen and show them this is how I do it and this is how I want it done, which I would say, please don't do that because that feels really controlling. And when we are super uber micromanaging, controlling of our kiddos, they're going to push back. My point is, unless you're going to really walk them through, nobody cleans the same way. And so you have to be able to say, if I've told my child to do the dishes, or even if like my spouse has done the dishes for me, because this happens for me where like I will go in and my husband is so amazing at doing the dishes. I hate doing the dishes, but he's so good at it, with the exception of I do not like the way that he loads the dishwasher. However, I don't go and say, hey, John, can you come look at this? Can you come see how we actually need to load it in this way? Maybe I would have at one point in my life, but now I just kind of like move things around so that I feel like they fit better in there. And that's good enough for me. I'm not going to make a big thing about it, right? So if we want our kids to go clean the bathroom and um And again, this is the difference between like if I tell my 15-year-old to clean the toilet and all she does was scrub the inside of the toilet and not the outside, I might say, "Oh, can you also wash the outside of the toilet as well?" I'm not going to go in there and get a white glove and wipe it, right? If my 6-year-old wants to clean the toilet, I might be okay with him just cleaning the inside of the toilet, scrubbing the inside, right? Which, by the way, my kids love scrubbing the inside of the toilet, which is so weird. Does anyone else have kids that like that? I don't know. Anyway, maybe it's just me. Anyway, all that to say, model this stuff for them. Lower your expectation. You cannot expect someone else, whether it's an adult or a child, to clean the exact same way that you clean. So relax, okay? Okay, the second thing I want to touch on is should they get allowance if they don't do all their chores? And I think this is actually a two-part question because not everybody does allowance, right? Or they do allowance differently. Like I actually just met with a family this last weekend that they have set chores that the kids have to do, which is cleaning their room, doing their laundry, and I want to say then they have one other chore during the week. Like this week they do dishes or this week they vacuum. So it like changes every week. But then if they want to earn allowance, there can be extra chores that they can do. So if they want to go clean up dog poop, they get paid for that. If they want to, clean the whole kitchen, they get paid for that. But if it's just their typical chores that they're expected to do, they don't get allowance for that. But I also know other families that like, here's your list of chores and you'll get paid, $5 a week if you get them all done. Or anyway, some people don't do allowance at all though. And I'm going to tell you guys, my family is one of those families. We don't do allowance at all. Um, we have at times allowed our kids to do extra chores. So kind of the idea that I just said, where, sometimes we'll say, well, yeah, if you want to go pick up the dog poop, I'll give you $5 or whatever, right? So we do that sometimes, but we just don't do allowance for several reasons that I won't get into. But that's just our personal thing. So I think this question is really like, if you're a family that does allowance, should they not get paid if they don't do their chores? So I think that a helpful thing for this question is I like the idea of the family I met with this last weekend where you have set chores and you're expected to do those and you get allowance, right? If you're in a family that pays allowance. But then these bonus chores, if you don't do those, then you don't get paid for those type of a thing. Or you could also just do like what the family I talked about does, which is you don't get paid for these required chores, but anything bonus will pay you for. Um, I think that the other thing we have to look at is if money is not a motivator for our kids, then why are we paying them allowance, right? Isn't that the idea that like we think as adults that, well, money is a motivator for us. And someday I have a job now and I get paid for my job. And isn't that what we're teaching them through chores? And I don't know. I think that there could be some different thoughts in that way. So I think if money is not a motivator, if you're telling your kids like, hey, if you don't get your chores done, you don't get allowance, and they don't do their chores, well, then what? So paying them allowance isn't really going to work then, right? So it's more of that expectation of we all contribute. This is everyone's home. We all live here. So we're going to each play our part that is still allowing our kids to be kids. Um, so there could be just different ways to use allowance. I will say the one thing that I think is unhealthy is if chores become in order for you to keep your cell phone, or if you want to be able to get new clothes for the school year, or if you want to go get your hair cut, things that like we should be doing for cell phone is not something we should be doing, but if our kids have a cell phone and we've already told them that they get this cell phone, I have to let my dog in. Um, if we have already like given our kids a cell phone, then we can't after the fact say, well, you only get to keep this phone if you do your chores. And if you don't do your chores, I'm taking your phone away. Or your chores are a payment for the phone, or your chores are a payment for new school clothes, or your chores are a payment for new shoes. Like you grew out of these shoes, and so I have to go buy new shoes. And so the only way that you're going to get new shoes is if you do your chores. Please don't do that. Like there's things that we are parents. We have to do these things for our kids. We have to buy them new clothes when they grow out of their old clothes. We have to buy them new shoes when they grow out of their old shoes. If we sign them up for soccer, we have to know that it's going to come with extra stuff, right? Shin pads, special shoes, the uniform, whatever it may be. And we can't use chores as a way for them to feel like they have to earn those extra things. Like that's just part of being a parent. So I would say allowance is one thing, but that is a whole different thing that can really teach our kids a really unhealthy thing about our relationship, that it's in order for me to have what I need, I have to earn it. And that shouldn't be how they feel about us as their parents. So um, pull that back. If you are finding yourself doing that, maybe tease that out and figure out where's that coming from? Is that just how you were raised? So you think that's what you're supposed to do? Maybe let's learn more about new ways, new approaches, because we just know so much more now than we did when most of us parents were raised, right? So I would caution you on that. Okay, the third thing I want to touch on is what age should we start chores? So I would say that really any age. Like I think that chores can actually be fun if we make it fun, right? Like my son loves it when I take the little silverware part out of the dishwasher and just set it right on the floor next to the silverware drawer, and he can sort them out and put them in there, right? And he's done that since I want to say he was 3 when I had him do that first. So there's just certain things that like it can be fun. Like I just said too earlier, cleaning the toilet. All of my kids, for some reason, love to scrub the inside of the toilet and clean it, right? So yeah, cool. Let's let them do that. So it there's no like minimum age of when chores should start. I would say that we just don't want it to be a negative thing. So if it starts as a negative thing, if we start chores with a 3-year-old and the expectations are set way too high and they really want to help put away silverware and then we get upset because they put the knife in the fork spot, that's not okay. Like that's on us, right? So if we can keep it fun and have it be like they're such a big helper and we're doing this together, right? Then chores can be done really at a young age. So we have to let go of that perfection and maybe try and bring more fun into it, play some music. I had another in the membership, I asked a question about chores in the membership, and I had somebody post on there that they do, I think she calls it the blessing hour. And so they set a timer, they play some music, and just for that hour, like they all kind of like bless each other by cleaning up the house, picking up things, putting things away, putting toys where they belong, shoes where they belong, kind of that. So that's fun, right? And it's everyone's doing it together. It's not like go to your room and clean your room all by yourself, isolated in your room with your room closed. But like, no, we're all doing this together. We're side by side doing this together. One thing that we do in our house that my husband came up with, I want to say like 10 or more years ago. I can't even remember, but he we call it DBL, and it stands for don't be lame, I think. Although, as I was writing notes for this, I think maybe it was don't be lazy, but I don't really like that. I don't really like don't be lame either. And the reality is, like, I don't know if my kids even know that's what it stands for. We just call it DBL. And I'm sure we came up with it before we were trauma aware parents. So we probably would not call it that now. But all that to say, in our home, if we say, hey guys, we're going to do a quick 10 minutes of DBL, everyone knows what that means. And everyone knows that, like, okay, we're going to tidy up the living room. We're going to put couches on or pillows on the couch, fold the blankets, put away toys, put away shoes. Mom might vacuum. So DBL is kind of like a term in our home that started as like maybe not the healthiest thing, but has become something that is just like fun and we do it, right? So, and kind of silly. So I would say that kind of coming back to the question of what ages, it's really about like, how do we keep this fun? Like we're engaged, we're connected, we're a family, and not making it a negative thing, because then it kind of defeats purpose. Let go of perfection, lower the bar. If they're doing the chore, they're doing the chore. Yay, that's a win, right? If they're doing the chore and then we're always coming after them, telling them, oop, you forgot this, and then they finish that. Oop, but then what about this? Then that's when chores become hard and too much. So, those are just some of my thoughts on chores. If you have questions that go beyond that, feel free to reach out to me, Melissa at mendingfamilieswa.com. Hope that was helpful. Hope it gave you some things to think about. And next week, actually, not next week, on Wednesday, so just in, oh no, shoot, I'm all confused. Next week, yes, next week. I am going to have someone on the podcast. Let me look it up, shall I? Next week, I am going to have I'm going to have Marianne Redis on the podcast, and she runs a local nonprofit here in town. And I'm excited for you guys to hear her story and how she got to where she is today running this nonprofit. And you'll hear more about what they're doing for the community. So it's really inspiring. It's bring the tissues because it definitely is a hard story to hear, but she has a lot of good wisdom to share, and I'm just excited for you guys to hear about that. So, Marianne is next week, and I will, yeah, enjoy your spring weather, and I'll see you guys next Monday. Okay, bye.